Hello everybody, this is Paul Pona. In this very important video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can benefit from what's happening with the really wealthy people, what they're doing, how are they using money, inflation, and what the world economy is doing, and basically show you exactly how money is created and all the other important aspects to help you succeed in 2022 and beyond. This is secret information never taught in any schools, any university, or anywhere else. Okay, so let's jump in really quickly. So first thing you need to know here is you need to know exactly how money is really created, right? That's the first stepping point, because if you don't know how that is done, then you're going to be kind of stuck, right? So firstly, let's talk about that. How is money created? So a lot of people don't know this assumption, that they feel that, oh, with this inflation and everything, there was $4 trillion printed in 2020, right? 4 trillion. Okay. What a lot of people don't realize is that they think that this was printed in physical cash currency, right? This is actually wrong, because it's not efficient. $4 trillion, there's not much paper to print. And secondly, you need hundreds of thousands of trucks to kind of basically maneuver that kind of money. You're talking mountains and mountains. It's not efficient, right? You got to immediately put it into people's pockets. What's the reality, and people don't know this, is that right now cash, right? Like physical cash. So basically what I mean by that is this cash. This is a $5 bill that I have here, or this is the Canadian dollar. I have US and Canadian. This physical cash, there's only about 5% of it, 5 to 7% of it in circulation right now, right? If it's a US dollar, Canadian dollar, it doesn't matter which part of the world, and there's only 5 to 7% of it is actually printed physical money. Then where is the other 95%? You might be wondering, right? How is that even created? Like, how is that other 95%, right? How is this created? Because this is where the crux of the matter is. This is where you gotta pay attention to where the money is, where the big bucks go, and what you're going to do with this, because everything I'll be sharing with you is not conspiracy or anything like that. This is facts. Okay, I actually went in, I spoke to some of the smartest financial advisors in this world right here. This is not financial advice, but this is education that you need to know. I spoke to many institutions. I've competed in some deals that I've been doing in the last couple of years with actual institutions that I'm going to be talking about, who manage trillions of dollars worth of assets, who actually, I believe, control the world, if you will. And you got to pay attention, because that is how policy is made, right? It's not about, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. It's actually what happens behind the scenes here. That'll help you make decisions better and be a better entrepreneur, right? Now, so this 95%, okay, is basically all digital. Okay, nobody wants to talk about it, but it's digital. Okay, so what happens is, a lot of people don't realize that if you think about this, then if 95% of the actual money is digital, how did this $4 trillion get sent into the system, right? And which caused inflation and everything. Like, I was just doing some research, and I want to show you quickly this fact. So if you see this, right, inflation, not including real estate right now. There was a recent CPI report which says it was 7.5%. That's not really accurate, because if you see, used cars are like up 40.5% in the last 1 year, by the way. Gas 40%, rental cars 29%, and real estate has also gone up about 20%, 25%, and even 40 to even 100% in some areas, depending on which part of the world you're in, right? In Canada, we had some of these go up by a lot. Here, none of these are 7.5% that was shown, right? So the numbers are not accurate, as you know, because in real life, you're facing it in the grocery stores and all that stuff. Now, this benefits only one type of people. And I want you to actually become that type of a person, so that you don't get stuck and be left behind, right? So basically, let's go back. Let me show you this other point here, which is very important. So what happens is, when we talk about money being created, money is actually created not by specifically the Federal Reserve printing it, but actually creating an environment for banks to help you out, to basically loan more money out. Okay, so when a bank comes to you and the bank says something like this, right? They're like, oh, you awesome people, I want to give you $20,000 in credit on your credit card, right? Like, basically, we're going to give you more in credit, right? This is $20,000 in new money that banks are actually creating for you. And that's how they actually make money. A lot of people have this assumption that banks basically take your money from the savings account and give it to people, and that's how they make their money. That is partly true. Okay. So what happens is, the way money is created and how banks make money, and they are kind of all related, and I'll talk about that, this is what happens, right? So what happens is, let's say this is you, right? This is you, right? Not the best drawing, but this is you. So you put, say, $100,000 in a bank, right? And this could be even equity that you put in, like a deposit that you put in to buy a house or whatever, right? This $100,000, you put it in the checking account of the bank, or you put it as a deposit or equity or whatever. Now, this under the fractional reserve banking system. Okay, this is very important. Nobody talks about this much, but this is very important. All the major countries, they use something called fractional reserve banking. So this effectively means that they need to hold a very little amount of reserve to actually lend the money over. I'll explain to you what I mean by that. So fractional reserve, right? Banking. Okay, so this is very critical. You need to know this. A lot of people don't know this, and it's kind of sad. But anyway, so under this system, right? Banks have to hold about 5% reserve, okay, for the money before they lend other people other money. So what happens is they'll take your money, they'll take 95,000 of it because the $5,000 is reserve now, right? So this 5% is 5,000 bucks. They put this as reserve. They take this $95,000, right? And then on average, they lend this 9 times over. Okay, so I'll round it off for you for the sake of purposes. So they'll create $950,000. Okay, so in effect, that means basically what they will do is they will lend it 9 times over. So that means if we really draw people around here, so they'll do 9 people, right? If you can just draw 9 people here, right? 9 people. And I can keep going. It's taking me more longer to actually draw these 9 people over than it is for them to create that $950,000, right? And this is 6 so far. This is 7. This is 8, and this is 9. Okay, so these 9 people, they're actually creating and they're lending money to these people that is from just your $100,000 that got started. Okay, and now everything I'm talking, multiply that over billions of dollars, right? And trillions of dollars even. So what happens now is a lot of people don't think that, oh, banks are not making money. Even these banks come in and they're like, oh, there's low interest rates right now. I think the interest rate right now is about 3% in the United States, give or take. I'm talking about the prime interest rate. So it's about 3%, right? So what happens is actually this 3%, that is the interest, in effect, because they pay you on your money. So this 100,000 you put, the actual checking account or whatever, the equity that you put in your house, whatever it might be, they pay you something like 0.18% or something, right? So this 100,000 will get you like $180, okay, in effect to you, something like that in that year. Very, very little amount. Then they will do this. They'll lend this 3% to 9 people. Okay, so this 3% goes to these 9 people here, right? And that effectively means, because they did it 9 times over, that is basically where they're making 3 times 9 equals 27% interest per year on your money. Okay, does that make sense? So now you're gonna say, oh, but like, this is crazy, Paul. Like, this is how they create the money. Then what about inflation? What about if why don't we become Venezuela, or what happens if something goes wrong? So this is where the problem comes. Okay, now if you're a Black entrepreneur, Latino, you are, for example, an immigrant, or even you're, for example, a women entrepreneur, right? Or even a senior, right? Even our seniors are getting killed on this inflation because you're living on pensions and savings and that kind of thing. So what happens is, when you go to the bank and you're like, I want to be one of these people here, right? That you should be giving me this $95,000. They're going to be like, we're not going to give you money unless you give us collateral or you give us some asset or something like that. So what's happening around the world is you'll have people like the Walmart family, right? There are like 9 of these people who are worth $1 billion. So what happens is, if they have something like $1 billion in assets, right? Bank will lend them unlimited money effectively. So because they're creating money out of thin air, right? So then they'll give this $1 billion asset, this Walmart family or Jeff Bezos or whoever, they're going to be like, oh, your assets are 1 billion. I'm going to give you 5 times that, right? So they're going to give them a loan of $5 billion to be able to invest in wherever they want. They want to invest in stocks. They want to invest in dividend earning stocks. They want to earn in real estate. They want to put it in. They want to put it in anywhere else. Well, they can do that. And then they'll give them for this 3% interest. So this is where the problem comes, which is the rich get richer because of this fact, right? Like, I grew up, and the funny thing is, I was one of these people where before I used to go in and I'm like, oh, can you give me a loan for a business, right? Like recently I was working with a woman entrepreneur, female entrepreneur. She's a person of color. So this is basically where, you want people like this in the industry, right? To be entrepreneurs, female, people of color and stuff like that. And the government even said, look, we're going to set aside like $500 million to these people. We're going to give you this money. And lo and behold, when we went in, the problem is that awesome lady, she had a beautiful business. I helped her out with the business plan and everything. When they went to the actual bank, right? The bank is like, what guarantees can you provide for us to give you this 500 million? Yeah, the government promised you 500 million, but we need some guarantees. We need to know this strategy will work. We'll need to know this business will work. So therefore, there's risk on our part. Therefore, we're not going to lend you money. You know why they're going to say that? And they're going to say that all day long. The government could even erase this. They'll be like, oh, it's not 500 million. We're going to give you 500 billion. Right, to veterans, seniors, to all these people from around the world. We'll help you with that. The problem is this money will not go out until a bank lends you that money, right? Does that make sense? So unless somebody is willing to guarantee you that money, like say, okay, I'm going to give my house as equity or whatever, they're not going to give it. Why? I'll tell you why. What happens, and this is what happened in 2008, 2009, is when somebody here, let's say if one person here does not end up paying back the loan, right? One of these people, right? Anybody in this chain of people, one person does not end up paying this loan. They go bankrupt, right? Now they created this 950,000, right? So automatically, right? $95,000 they gotta erase, and that means they don't have the money anymore, right? To pay you in this case. Let's say you want to withdraw this $100,000, they don't have that money in effect, right? Because already it got lent over 9 times over. So because of this was the problem back in the Great Depression. This was the problem even in 2008, 2009, where it was not just one person, it was like more than one. It was like 3, 4 people, like all these people, right? So now, because of this fact, they will only give it to people who already have money or already have an existing business. So I don't want to make this a doom and gloom thing, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to waste my time on that. It's basically, you can sit all day and talk about like all these conspiracy theories. I'm going to talk about what this means to you, and how you can benefit from this long term, and what you can do about this, right? It's like, it's easy to talk negatively. Oh, these bankers are out to get me and all that. It's another way to think about it in a perspective. Oh, this is what the wealthy are doing. How can I structure my life along this way, right? Now, this is where the problem comes, okay? And this is what you got to pay attention to. So right now, people always are pitting against each other, right? Like you're going to be like, oh, Democrats, Republicans, and all that stuff, but they don't realize this. The actual world, the way it works, and the way the system works, and this is important, and this checks and balances automatically in place. But what happens is you have your government, right? This is your government, right? And what happens with the government? Every single person in the government wants to get reelected, right? So there's an election every 5 years or something like that. So there's no permanence generally in here. On the other hand, above this government, you have these central banks. In the US, that central bank would be the Federal Reserve, right? It's the Fed, so Federal Reserve. All right, so it's like Federal Reserve. So this is your central bank of US. In Canada, it's Bank of Canada. In wherever European Union has its own thing, and so on and so forth, right? So what happened with this Federal Reserve is this one is the most powerful institution in the world. Nobody wants to talk about it, because with one pen stroke, they can destroy the entire world economy if they choose to. They may not, but if they choose to. That's a very big, powerful thing. And here, these folks here could be effectively more than 5 years. They can be there for 15, 20 years. Secondly, you also have the banks that the Federal Reserve is connected to the banking system here, because the banks are the ones which are like, it's like a distribution network, if you will, right? Federal Reserve cannot really deposit money into your account. The bank would, right? And then there's another third key element, which nobody talks about. A lot of people are oblivious to it as well, which is kind of weird, which is important for you to know, is here, institutions, okay? This is quite important. Institutions. And this is basically a third layer, right? And this right here, and then together with the institutions, you also have another division, and I'll talk about it. That's not as important as people make it seem, but I'll explain to you anyways. So institutions would be basically things like, I'll explain to you, BlackRock, BlackRock is the biggest company, if you will. I'll talk about them in just a second. And then you have Vanguard. Okay, these are two. There are many others, but these are the two biggest. Okay, Vanguard. Okay, so these two combined own something like 17 trillion worth of assets. Okay, where do they get their money? Well, from your pension plans, from your real estate mortgages, whatever you can think of, they have their hands in a piece of it. Now, why this is important that I gotta mention is there's another layer here, and that is finally corporations, right? Big businesses. Let's talk about those here. Let's write them down. So big business, okay? So big business would be any company like your Coca-Cola, like your, if you will, Amazon, Google, whatever. Any company which has more than 100,000 employees, right, is a big business, okay? Again, none of this is conspiracy theory or anything. It's just fact. Okay, so this is big business. So these folks all have a say in what the government does. It's not basically where somebody thinks about something and the decisions happen automatically. It's this, because every little element matters. If the big business decides to shut down, 100,000 employees go out bankrupt, then the pension funds, which is the institutions, will make less money, meaning their 17 trillion is going to shrink, which is not good for them. If that happens, the Federal Reserve is going to be in trouble because they cannot meet full employment and other mandates that they have to keep functioning, right? So now, here is what I need you to pay close attention to, okay? Government is only every 5 years, right? So the institutions. Let me give you a simple point. The most powerful man in the world, in my opinion, right now, my opinion, it can change, is the chairman of the Federal Reserve, right? Whoever gets elected. So this is the most powerful person in my opinion. First, second most powerful person in the world is this person right here. The institutions, I'll show you, BlackRock and Vanguard, specifically BlackRock, more so. Third, and the third biggest folks are the banks. Okay. And then the fourth biggest are the big business. The government comes fifth. Okay. And you people, me, you, we come last, obviously, right? We are not the priority in this list, unfortunately. So now what happened, and this is something nobody wants to talk. I mean, I posted it in our Facebook group and other places. I was talking about this topic and people said, Paul, here you go again. You're a conspiracy theorist and you're like very negative. No, this one, I want to make this a positive video. I'm not a kind of person who tries to be negative, because negative is a depressing way to live, right? Saying, oh, this is banks are out to get you. This is bad. This is bad. No. What do we do about this, right? It's easy to give up, but you can apply some strategies that the wealthy are using. And it's not like everybody is inheriting money, right? There are a lot of people who came from nothing and using these strategies as well. So let me explain. So back in 2008, right? 2008, the crisis that occurred, would you believe it? The biggest shareholder of every single corporation, the big business, we are talking about these folks here, right? That I want to highlight, is actually BlackRock, right? What BlackRock doesn't own, Vanguard owns. So if you go in, let me show you this. If you go into BlackRock, they own 10 trillion worth of assets. And BlackRock alone, if you just don't even include Vanguard, the 10 trillion, it's almost every single country's GDP combined. So meaning, except for, I believe, US and China, it's every single country. So they're the third biggest country in the world, if you really put it together, right? And if you add Vanguard, they're even bigger, right? 7 trillion. So 17 trillion. This is another company, right? They own 7 trillion. And these are all your pension funds, teachers funds, union funds. You can think of everything you can think of. They have a piece in it. They're the biggest shareholder of every single company in the world, okay? Almost every single company. So every bank you can think of, every gasoline company, every oil and gas, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Apple, Tesla, whatever you can imagine they are. Now, what happened is in 2008, 2009, Larry Fink, who is this guy right here that you see, right? He was actually, brought in 2008, 2009 to actually help with the bailout. Okay, you see this massive bailout, the Wall Street giants exposed, blah, blah, blah. He was the one who owns almost his company, right? BlackRock, he's the CEO, owns all these shares in all these big companies. He was the one who was brought in by the government because they don't know much as he would know about the Wall Street and the industries to bail out. So meaning he was one of the key elements on deciding which industries would get which amount of money, how much, right? So for example, Ford, GM, there were like airline industries and all the other industries. He was basically in charge of deciding how much, when, what terms, all that stuff. He was the one who was deciding. It was not like, oh, the government of your geniuses will do it. And then, you know what's funny about this? even in during the the stuff that happened over the last couple of years, when airline industries were shut down, even during the lockdowns where hotels were locked down and stuff. The same person, our gentleman right here, right? This gentleman right here, right? He was brought in as well to kind of do the bailout money, or in this case, the stimulus money, to give to these industries. He decided who gets what, how much, when, what terms, more or less, right? I mean, because he knows and he's a shareholder of all these companies. So personally, he kind of benefited from that, right? And what I'm trying to explain to you here is that they're all combined. They all work like together, hand in glove. And the irony is, if you see, 2008 was the Democrats, right? I think it was Obama who was there in his administration. And then if you see 2020, it was under Trump, right? The Republicans. So that means two different parties, two different industries, two different things, same person controlled how the money was distributed. Isn't that interesting if you think about it? Now, again, it's not conspiracy. I mean, this is a fact. And why this is the case that I'm trying to explain to you is they're all connected. Okay. So if you're thinking, and this is a sad thing, because I like people who are Black, Latino, or are seniors, veterans, I want to help people. Like we're doing affordable housing projects right now, right? So I always felt the government is going to come in and they're going to solve all my problems or give me these issues. And they have this new program. They're going to have this new program that's going to help us. But at the end of the day, they're also connected to these different industries. There's four big other institutions that nothing goes through without some element of their trust, right? Now, what is happening? What is happening around the world right now? And again, I'm going to tell you what's happening and why you got to pay attention, why you got to be an online entrepreneur too. Being an entrepreneur is a very important thing right now. So what's happening is, because of what's happening around the world, what the reality here that is happening, and this is quite important you understand, is because banks can lend unlimited money, right? So let's look at it this way. You got unlimited money, right? Effectively, like tomorrow, if your bank tells you they're going to give you 20,000 line of credit, right? 20,000 line of credit in your credit card, right? Let's say it's credit card. That is basically $20,000 that they created out of thin air. Okay, please understand, out of thin air. So the risk that they have is basically only, right, if that person does not end up paying back that particular loan. So who are the people who are more likely to pay back? People who already have money, right? Right. So you see the circle there. And so the irony then becomes, the people who are actually have this money, they're thinking, where do I put my money, right? You understand? So people who have unlimited money, they can get from the bank at 3% interest, let's say, they're thinking, where can I put this money that will get at least even, let's say, generally they say something called debt service coverage. So meaning effectively, if they can get something like 6% on this money, they could do this millions and millions and billions of dollars over, right? So what happened over the last couple of years is you see a whole bunch, like insane amount of demand for hard assets. Okay, so hard assets. So this is like real estate. You see this in basically any income generating business, right? This is why I was telling you, I'm going to show you the positive aspect of all this stuff as we go along. So I'm basically literally, I've seen in the last couple of years where I myself and some of the deals that I've looked into, I'm competing with these institutions, like these 10 trillion, 9 trillion, some which are in the hundreds of billions, $500 billion. And I'm competing for them in deals that they would never be buying, right? So what's happening is income producing assets and businesses, right? Like even like a business like your local, if you will, car dealership or your local car wash or whatever, businesses that are generating a good amount of cash flow, right? So cash flow are being brought out like crazy. People are buying them like crazy, these companies. So what's happening, and it went so far now, like if you go to Google, and I'll show you actually this interesting fact. If you go in, and there's another company called Blackstone, which is kind of similar to BlackRock. They're also in a private equity, buying homes. You do this article, right? They are buying and renting homes. You see this $6 billion in buying. They bought 17,000 homes. Would you believe it? Like, would you ever think about it, where some of these big companies are actually buying everyday homes? Now, why is that the case? People think, oh no, they're out to get me. No, it's because even these folks, they've realized, hey, look, I'm unable to buy enough stuff. Like I'm getting unlimited money here. This is unlimited from banks, right? If I can just somehow acquire hard assets that is backed by something, right? And if I can just buy this and I can get 6% on that, then effectively I'm making unlimited. I can keep doing it again and again and again and again and again, right? And this is what's happening. So what I would say, again, it's not financial advice, but if I were to do what I'm doing, right, is I'm never going to sell any asset, whether it's a house, whether it is your vacation cottage, whether it is a business that you have that is generating you money. No, you don't sell them, you leverage them. Okay, this is what the wealthy are doing. Now, what I mean by that, what do I mean by leverage? So let's talk about that other aspect here. Okay, so how the wealthy think, okay, and this is something they don't teach in university, college, or whatever. It took me so long to actually understand this, and I'll explain to you. So imagine this. This is why my goal is to get you successful in business, right? So what happens here, right? So you have a business here, right? So let's say this is your business, okay? And I can successfully coach you to do this. And that's my goal, actually. That's why I try to do as much free training as possible. Say it does $100,000 a year, right? In profit, okay? 100,000, okay? Now, this is after tax. The tax for a business is actually very low, as you probably know. Business tax in the United States is about 21%. Everywhere in the world, business tax is lower than the income tax, right? This is a business tax. If it was income, let's say it's income tax. In California, for example, you're looking at 60% in California. I've seen in Europe and Sweden and stuff, it's almost 60 some percent. Even if it's in a low tax state, you're looking at at least 40% gone in taxes, right? That's not including sales taxes and other factors, right? Property taxes, you get my point. This stuff, right? So that's 40% gone. So always business taxes will be lower. They'll never touch it. They'll never change it. So what's happening here is, let's say yours is $100,000 business per year, right? And you go to the bank, okay? Hear me out here carefully. You go to the bank and you say, look, I want to buy a property right now. Like, let's say I want to buy a house, or I want to buy, say, a condominium. I want to buy an income producing business. I want to buy whatever, right? You got my point. So what happens is bank is going to be like, oh, really? So your business is $100,000. Okay, interesting. We're going to give you 4 to 5x this to buy another asset that is income producing. Remember, I told you how BlackRock and these institutions, Blackstone and all these guys are doing that, where what they will say is, I will give you, right? I'll not just give you 100,000 that you have here. You put that 100,000 as a down payment. I'm going to give you $500,000, right? Meaning you can buy an asset worth $500,000 today, okay? Depending on different asset classes. I mean, it all depends. Right now, there seems to be a demand for industrial properties, a rental multifamily, or a condominium rental houses, right? Your single family house, depending on which part of the world you're in, it doesn't matter. So because central banks are in everywhere, every developed country, Europe, Australia, Canada, US, same thing. Anyway, so you have 500,000, right? So what happens is, let's say in the next 4 or 5 years, in the last 2 years, remember I told you, if I go back here, I told you without real estate, these were the appreciation of these assets, right? Real estate is something like 40%, it went up, okay? So if I put in here real estate, it went up at least 40%, correct? Now, but I'm not going to be like these people who are going to oversell it. Let's just say 20% it went up, okay? Fair enough? So it went up by, say, 20 to 25%, okay? So let's do half of it, right? So 20%, okay? 20% appreciation, okay? This happened over the next 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, okay? Appreciation, okay. Now, let's just take the calculator and let's just do a simple math, right? So 20% of what? 500,000 is $100,000, okay? Does that make sense? So now with that 20% appreciation, this 500,000 stuff is worth $600,000, right? 600,000. Now, so the same thing that the bank gave you 500,000, you got this for 600,000. Now, this is what happens, interestingly enough, okay? So let's say this happened over a 2 years period, okay? This is what's happening around the world right now, right? 2 years. So this became 600,000. So what happens is this 100,000, that appreciation that occurred, right? There is no tax on this, okay? They never will be able to tax, because if they touch that, then the institutions and all these big industries, they get impacted, and they're never going to allow that to be impacted, because again, they're going to say, okay, it's going to hurt the pensions. People are hardworking people. We need to double their money over their lifetime so that we can pay them, blah, 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 right? So they're never going to do it. So then what's going to happen? So let's say next year, okay? And bank, by the way, just so you understand, just so you're clear, they ask for a 2-year history, okay? Just so you understand, just so we are specific. So you need to have a business at least generating money last year and this year, for example, or this year and next year, for example, if you're doing it next year, right? So then what happens? Watch out, pay close attention here, right? So now this made 100,000 next year. Let's say this $100,000 next year. Then what happens? The bank is going to be like, oh, interesting. You had this property which has appreciation of $100,000 here. Okay, cool. Let's add that in here as well. So now what we're going to do is you have $200,000 that you're worth. We're going to give you 5x that too now, 4 to 5x. Again, depending on the asset class, I'll just say 5 because my math will be easier, but you can say even 4x. But now that means literally now you can invest in $1 million asset. Okay, that is income generating, that pays for itself. Like imagine like just like how your house would appreciate over time, you became a millionaire now in a 2-year time frame using this simple strategy. So then my point is, and this is what I'm trying to explain to you, and my whole point is, you can look at it negatively, like all these negative folks out there who are like, oh, you know, the government is out to get me, all these other things. Or you can look at it positively, where how do I build this, right? This is what my goal is. This is what I'm trying to get you here, because then getting to this is not hard. And then you know what's going to happen, and I'm going to tell you, and as a fact, okay, what's going to happen is, and this has been happening more and more, right? What's going to happen is this 20, right? This 20% that we're talking about here, which is zero tax. This is how Jeff Bezos makes his money. This is what Elon Musk makes his money. This is what Bill Gates makes his money from. So what happens here is over time, right? If this 1 million is worth, say, because of appreciation, it went up over a 5-year period or whatever, and it's now worth 1.5 million, let's say, right? Let's say 1.5 million, right? Now you can keep repeating the same process. Now that 500,000, which is the appreciation, which was not taxed, you can do the same math now. Even if your business was just making 100,000, it doesn't have to grow. This is a cool thing. So if you take 100,000 here, now you add up this $500,000 here, and then if this business also, this investment you made had some appreciation or whatever, then you can now do this 500,000 now here, you add it. Now this is $600,000, right? And then again, they're going to give you 5x, 4 to 5x, right? So this is right here. You see this? 3 million. You see that? So this is how, and this is basically what I'm showing you right now is off of 100,000. Now you do it over some of these guys out there who do 1 million, 10 million, 5 million. You get my point, right? Or 100 million, right? There are people who do 100 million a year. Now you see that, right? You multiply that. You see what I'm trying to make sense, how rich will only get richer, and the poor who don't have any assets are going to be left poor. And there's no sympathy for you. There's not going to be any, oh, I feel so sorry for you. And anything, they'll throw scraps at you. I'll give you an example of what I mean by scraps. So think of it this way, right? Simplified, right? During the whole thing that we went through, they gave like $2,000, right? To every individual, right? $2,000, and some got 4,000, whatever. $2,000. People were like, oh, $2,000 the government is giving me. I'm so thankful, right? They gave me something rather than nothing. And the reality is, because of the fact they gave 2,000 to people, there are these people with this 20, 40, 50% appreciation who made billions. Okay, now you imagine this company here, right? We're talking about Vanguard, Blackstone, all these folks, right? So where is that? Okay, let's say even Vanguard here, right? 7 trillion, right? You just add 20% to that. That's how much they're gaining, right? And you do that for any company. You just pick any random company like Amazon or Tesla, or you do it with Google, or you do it with even Boeing or whatever. That appreciation, which is not taxed, is basically where they make all their money, right? And effectively, they gave you 2,000, but they made billions. So this is why you gotta have financial education, right? You gotta think like how these folks think. And this is the reason why I was getting back to this point, which is, if you go back here, this is the reason why, if you see, where was this? Yeah. So if you see, Blackstone is buying up homes now because they want to get their hands on as much of this stuff as possible so that they can keep replicating it and keep growing their asset portfolio, such to the point where it's going to become harder and harder for you and me to buy assets. Okay, so if I were you, and if I were me, if I could get a house or I could do whatever, I would do it, right? I would not be a renter. And this is what you're seeing across. That's why it's supply and demand, right? Housing prices are going up because you have folks like these buying up houses, right? Which is crazy because they have unlimited money, as I told you, right? If they just give it out as rent to you and they can make small percentage back in return, they'll keep buying unlimited amount of these. And they're trying to find more and more and more of these properties, right? So now, what is the positive impact of this? Okay, so let me talk about the positive aspects of it, because I want to be clear, because there's so much arguments that there's this so-called politicians out there who are like, oh, we're deficit hawks, right? So let's talk about the deficit of the environment, right? So let's talk about it. So right now, the US and every country in the world has, I think US has like, what is it? I think 20 trillion, 40 trillion. I don't even know. Let's even say 20 trillion for now, right? I think it's more than that, but I'll just make it up because the underlying thing is not how much the debt is, what it is about, okay? So what happens here is, to understand how the debt works, you got to understand how money is destroyed. Remember I told you how money is created, right? How is money created? Well, basically, banks will just create more of this credit. They'll back it with hard assets like a business, like an investment company, like a stocks or dividend stocks or whatever it might be, something that is generating income. That could be a local car garage, your repair shop, your hair salon, whatever that is making money. Okay. Now, let's simplify this process. I know I'm trying to go fast because you can watch this as a replay later on. I don't want to waste time with filler content, okay, which is useless. Okay, now, so basically here, how is money destroyed? Let's answer that question. This is more important than how money is created, by the way. Nobody wants to talk about this. How is money destroyed? Okay, this is a big question. Nobody asked this question. They're like, how is money created? They're printing money, but how is it destroyed? So there's only two ways that money can actually be destroyed, okay? And these two are the only ways. There's no other way. I mean, other than maybe burning it. But this, as I said, there's only 5% of actual currency like this under circulation. So how do you burn something that doesn't even exist? It's digital, like in a computer. So it's like this, right? It's like when the bank says, I'll give you $20,000 in credit to your thing, your checking account looks something like this, right? You have debit, and then you have credit, right? You understand what I mean? So when bank says, I'll give you $20,000 in credit, it is going to be plus 20,000, right? So this is 20,000 that got created. So debit would be, let's say you're buying groceries or you're buying whatever you want. So this is your 500, sorry, let's put this as negative so it's easier for you to understand. So this is basically negative 500, right? So you understand now? So your total account will now have 500 minus $20,000, which is basically 19,500. So this is how people do. Now the bank effectively has the power to add extra zeros here. You know what I mean? They could do it. If they wanted, they can add these extra zeros here and effectively make it 19,500,000. But they don't. Why? Because if you don't pay it back, it's a problem, right? So basically now, how is this destroyed? So this is a bigger question. So there's only two ways they can do it, okay? So they can do it by one, which is taxing you, increase the taxes, okay? So you raise the taxes up, then effectively the government will get the money. It's not in supply, meaning it's not in your hands, it's not in everybody's hands. They raise the tax, you destroy that money. Meaning if they collect X amount of taxes, effectively they took it from the economy, right? In their pockets. So that's how that they destroyed. The second way you actually destroy money is pay back the actual loan. Pay back the loan, okay? So basically this means if you pay back the loan, you effectively removed the money. So as an example, in this example, okay, pay attention to this chart here, right? In this example, instead of all the stuff, let's simplify this. If this 20,000, that credit that you took, right, you paid it back, let's say, right? You paid back that loan, and then you erase this money because you paid it back, right? So then that 20,000 is erased. So in the similar example, when I go back to the earlier drawing, right, which I was trying to explain to you, where's that drawing here? I think it was, yeah. So this drawing here, remember I was trying to show you this one where there's 9 people here. So effectively, there's 9 people, like this part right here I was trying to explain. So this one right here, right? Let me show you so that it's easier for you to see. Anyway, so this part right here, you see these folks right here. So effectively, if any one of these folks pay back, they get erased. So like this person right here, they paid back their loan. This money is erased, and it's destroyed basically. So it's just it got paid back, so it destroyed, meaning that's $95,000 in this case less that the economy has, right? So ironically, then, isn't it interesting that it's in the best interest, okay, this best interest of the government, of the banking system, and all that stuff to ensure that they never pay back this loan, right? Never. Because I'll tell you why. Let's say they pay back this loan, right? So let's even say like, so let's say this 20 trillion, right? They're like, oh, let's get like a epiphany and let's pay back 2 trillion of this. So effectively now we paid back 2 trillion, and then now we have say $18 trillion left. Okay. So this what happens now when they do something like this, and this is why they'll never do it, by the way, just a caveat here, is if they do this, what happens is $2 trillion, right? I'm talking in trillions, get pulled back from the economy. Now you got to understand that effectively means that your taxes went up, which is not popular. Secondly, that effectively means that they have to do cuts for Medicare or your pension plan, or even they might have to pull back certain things that they're actually paying people. And effectively that means that your everyday stuff, right, that they're spending money on, right? Maybe they're building roads, bridges, or whatever it is. They don't have the money to pay for it because they pull that from the economy. That effectively means job losses and blah, 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 right? So that means, in effect, no matter if the greatest deficit hawk in the world or this person is so worried about the national debt or whatever comes in, they're not going to do anything, because they do this right here. They bring out and they bring this down, the fiscal flows, as it's known as, okay, which is effectively means that how much money is being sent to the economy and how much the government is taking in. It's going to have an imbalance, right? And that's going to be a depression. So basically, we'll all be in soup kitchens, effectively, because imagine the government salaries, like government employees, nobody will be employed because there's no money, because they took it out, swoosh, from the market. So what's going to happen in the future, and this is important, and this is what's been happening, and this is what the big wealthy are betting on it, because they control things and they control the employment and all that stuff, is they're betting on this to keep on getting more and more and more and more. So this will become maybe 40 trillion in the next 10 years, double or triple or whatever. So when this happens, since we already know that when stuff is created, every asset value goes up, whether it's your business's worth, whether it is investments, your house, whatever, right? So you'll see where somebody will attempt to do this, they're going to crash the economy, and then they're going to go back, and all those businesses, the institutions, all that stuff are like, why did you do this? Like, why would you want to intentionally destroy the economy, right? So it's going to keep on going worse, no matter what people will tell you. That's a fact. So now, what does this all mean to you? Okay, this is all information that I gave you. This is like a bunch of information. What does it really mean to you? So what this means to you is you got to see what the wealthy are doing and what they're anticipating and all that stuff. So right now what's happening is the Federal Reserve and all these folks out there, they're going to be like, oh, we're going to raise the interest rate. They're going to raise the interest rate to combat the inflation, right? Interest rate. They're going to raise the interest rate. That's what they're saying. And what they're going to do, and this happened in 2018, by the way. That's why you got to be a student of history. I read this stuff because I want to know what happened before. In 2018, they raised interest rates like this, and then the market started crashing. Again, market means who? Let me go back here again. So the very important information. So market means who, right? So, all right. So here we go. This is basically, let me open that up here. Yeah, the market means who? Okay, let's go here. This, if they raise interest rate too quickly, which they did in 2018, these big businesses, this folks right here, right? They do not have enough money to borrow, right? You understand? Because their cost of borrowing goes up. So I can go into deep on this, but I'm going to simplify this for you, where it basically effectively means that Big businesses will not have enough money to borrow for cheap. So effectively, these 100,000 employees will have become something like 80,000. They're going to fire 20,000 because they cannot borrow enough money. Then they're going to go back and they're going to be like two institutions. They're going to be like, your pensions are going to go down because only 20,000 or 80,000 are contributing, 20,000 are not. So these institutions will go back and they'll be like, banks, you look, you cannot lend enough money because, there's not much out there for people because there are people who are jobless, so they cannot pay back the loans. These banks will go back to the Federal Reserve and be like, hey, something is going wrong. You got to do something. And then they'll go to the government and be like, let's lower the interest rate again. So it's a cycle, right? Everybody's involved, except for you and me, right? So basically, what I mean by that is what they will do, and this is what's most likely to occur, and all the wealthy people are betting on this, is they're going to raise interest rate and then they're going to drop it. And when they do that, right, and it's going to set a precedent. So they're going to do it maybe for a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe they'll do it something like that. And then they're going to again signal that we are going to start trying to basically buy back stuff and also reduce the interest rate, right? So then what's going to happen is, remember I gave you that example on like the appreciation aspect of things here. Let's see where that was. But anyway, the point is that when you are looking at this right here, when the interest rate they did in 2018, it crashed the market. So then they started pumping more money into the system and reduced the interest rate. Again, all the appreciation occurred. Effectively, what they're doing when they do this is this 2 trillion goes up, 20 trillion goes up more and more and more, right? The debt. So that means for you to participate in the economy, what's happening now is it's a necessity for you to have a profitable business. And it's much better now than ever before in history for you to have a profitable business, because I'll tell you why. And this is my goal. That's why I want to train you as an entrepreneur. And I want to give you all the tools, resources, and everything else to be successful, because this is quite critical. Okay. And I'll answer your questions as well when I'm seeing. You can post any questions you have in the chat box as well. I'll be happy to answer them, because this is free training. I don't have anything to gain. I don't have anything to sell you. I don't care, because this is education that is very important, because a lot of people don't understand how the fractional reserve banking works, how it is only going to benefit people with existing assets and stuff like that. And so if you go back here, this is what I wanted to kind of show you, right? So you see this appreciation part that I was telling you, which is 0% tax. So what happens here, and this is the irony of it, is because there's so much demand, so everything is demand and supply. So it's like this, right? Think of it this way, right? If I go back here, if Blackstone here, this company, right, if they are buying up 6 billion here of homes, right, and there's 17,000 homes, and they're buying it in like neighborhoods where they feel there's a lot of growth or whatever, what's going to happen? These 17,000 homes, right, are out of the market. Meaning right now what's happening is there's so many people interested in buying these assets. There's so few people who can buy it if there's a big company bidding and fighting against them. So what's going to happen, and it's going to become worse and worse and worse, is more and more assets are going to be gobbled up over the next couple of years. Even on a high interest rate scenario, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked, because these folks have unlimited money, as I told you. Effectively, if they can pay back the interest to the banks, they can effectively take any amount of money, right? So basically what happens then is the 17,000 are done. So now what happens is the 17,000 people could not afford a house, right? They couldn't buy this. So then effectively what happens now is these 17,000 real homeowners who sold this house to these people, when they have to go out there, they're short by 17,000 homes, right? So then they'll have to bid more money to be able to buy that same house that they could have bought it for cheaper. So this is only going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So my point here is what can you do about this, right? What can you do about this? And this is quite important, because what I am a believer in is we got to find a solution, and we got to think what the rich people and the success. I wouldn't even say, see, this is the problem. Rich is such a weird word. I don't believe you should be aiming to be rich. Okay. So let me explain what I mean by that. This is another thing they don't teach you in school. So rich, let's talk about what rich means, right? Rich is people who make money, right? So people who make money. This is what we call rich. So what do we mean by that? So what we mean by that is people like your athletes, your celebrities, people who generate a salary, right? This is your rich people. They generate a salary, right? Now, That's not somebody you want to aspire to be. Why? Because as taxes might be increasing, as the income might not, salary might not go up as much, right? So let's say this athlete is making 1 million a year or 10 million. Let's even say 10 million a year. They'll only make that until they are working, right? Until they're playing basketball, they're playing whatever, they're singing, whatever. The minute they retire from that sport or that music or whatever, they'll not make any money, right? So effectively, these people, inflation hits them as hard as anybody else, right? But on the other hand, there's wealthy, right? This is what I was trying to tell you, wealthy. This is what you have to aspire to be. And, the problem is people don't have the differentiation of this too. These are people who own assets, okay? Assets means, this is again another thing you got to know. Assets mean that you got to have income producing business, like you have shares in a business, you have you own a company, right? You basically own property or real estate or whatever, right? So property or real estate, whatever, right? Something that has that intellectual property, right? Like copyrights, intellectual property, IP, something that you can actually value, right? That you can sell. This is what the wealthy actually own. If you go and study the top 100 people in your country, in your city, this is the difference. And this gets passed on for generations. Okay, this is the sad part of our life, is basically where the unfair advantage is not in starting the business. I can teach you to start a business online super quickly and generate revenue and all that stuff, get you up to the next level. That's the easy part. People think that's the hard part. The hard part is trying to compete with these people who are your Walmart heirs, your people who inherited assets, right, or inherited money. Because now what they can do is, as I mentioned to you before, if they have an asset that's kind of paid off, or at least almost fully paid off, let's say they have a $10 million worth of asset right now that's paid off, which is nothing for a lot of people who probably inherited it, they can go in and then they can buy a $50 million asset, no problems, leveraging this existing asset. Okay. And that means literally they could multiply money out of thin air, right? And this asset, after it appreciates, as I mentioned before, because currency will only become less and less valuable as time goes on, because as I said, there's no incentive for governments or institutions and big businesses to destroy money. They will love to create money, but not destroy it. Taxation and paying back the loans. Nobody wants that. So you'll see more, which I'm going to bet you. Right now we have a 30-year mortgage. Don't be surprised if it's going to be a 40-year mortgage very soon, right? Because they want to get as many people to take debt as possible, because banks want to give unlimited money, as I mentioned before, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is you need to think of yourself like the wealthy here, okay? And that's what I've focused on. I put my energy in the last couple of years, 2.5 years, because when I saw this, it just blew me away when I was speaking to very, very successful people who deal with billionaires, people who do deals of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And what I realized is what you can do is all in cycles, right? If you build a successful business, right, then you can buy more property, which is a hard asset, which generates money. You can buy your local business, you could buy something else, right? And then therefore you could buy another house, you can buy a rental property, whatever you wish, right? You understand my point. And then after that, because you have two of these things, it'll only multiply, and then you can pass it on to generations even. Because selling anything right now, in a way, ironically, is kind of silly if the bank is going to give you something where you can keep this 10 million asset, but you can also buy another asset. So meaning you can, with one asset, you can buy two. You understand? Two for the price of one, if you will. That's what's happening. That's why you see Blackstone buying up houses all of a sudden, which they never did before, because they know that they can leverage existing assets for more and more and more, right? So my point here then, it's very straightforward and very simple. And this is where I changed my circle of friends and stuff, right, over the years. Because see, when I was growing up, I grew up in the inner city, and the people I was hanging out with and stuff like that were from that. I didn't even own a car. Our family didn't own a car and stuff. So what we used to do. So this is what happens, right? So in the inner city and where I grew up and stuff, there's this mentality which is, right now I own a restaurant. Let's say, right? They own a restaurant. Then they're like, 30% of the money that we make is cash. So then we don't pay any taxes on this, right? Because it's cash. Oh, so we're saving so much money on this stuff. and they pat themselves on the back, right? Oh, we're saving so much money because if I put this money in the bank, then I got to pay taxes. Or if I just put it under my pillow, that's better. And there's this mentality, and I just think that was what successful people did, right, to game the system. But the reality is, if you put the mirage out and you see this, right, the people who do this mentality here, right, this kind of mentality here, they are only dealing with 5% of the actual money supply. Let me be clear here. They're only dealing with the 5% of the game. You know what I want to play? I want to play the game where there's actually 95% of the money out there, right? 95%, which is actually in banks where they actually give this money out to people. And so I want to play this game. So I cannot hang out with people who have this mentality, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to save 20% or 30% in taxes when the money is actually here, right? So what I'm trying to explain to you is, think of it, everything that you do going forward this year, next year, and everything else, with everything I'm teaching you, because my goal is not to teach you just video marketing or something like that. I want you to build a business so then you can be in this 95%. And in our online business, everything is transparent, right? You withdraw the money from your PayPal account or your Payoneer or your Stripe account or whatever. It goes straight to the bank. There's a record, right? There is no where the money is coming from. Everything is clear, right? So that means even if you just make $100,000, right, and that 100,000 you can leverage in your locality or wherever and buy something for 400,000 or even 500,000, right? Dollars. And if you keep doing this every year, in 5 years, you'd have been a multi-millionaire, right? And the problem we have, the mentality of the people, is the lottery mindset has crept in, and that I don't blame them, because what's happening is everybody has a salary mindset, right? And as an entrepreneur, you should never have that. So as an example, this is business income. It has benefits, right? So let's say, for example, you're buying tools to grow your business, like some of our tools. You can obviously take guidance from an accountant, but it's for growing your business. That's a business expense, right? It's deducted from your account, which you cannot do on a personal basis. If, for example, if another benefit that you get here, this is a big thing nobody wants to talk about. This I want to explain to, so it's easy, but let's do it this math here, right? So let's say I'll simplify this for you, okay? So let's do it this way. You have $100,000, right, in your business income, right? And it has benefits of less taxation and deductions and all that you folks already know. You can ask your accountant, they'll tell you the basics. Now, the benefit here is this 100,000, if you continue to keep making, that's why I teach people and folks like you, right, how to keep making money long term. I don't want to teach you something that's only a 3-week thing where you upload something, you download something, you copy and paste something and you make money, and then 3 weeks later it doesn't work anymore, right? So now this is very important, and this is quite important, right? And this is basically where, if you have this $100,000 that you're making, which is what my goal is to make you, and this is what Wealthy do, but Wealthy will think like this. They'll add this extra zeros. They'll be like 100 million. You know what I mean? It's just simplifying this. I'm just showing you numbers that you can kind of understand. So what happens is, so you took this 100,000 and then you made a purchase of that 500,000 I was telling you about, right? 5x, 20% down, right? So you bought this $500,000 property or whatever that's generating income, a business or whatever, doesn't matter. Now what happens is, if this property or this particular business or whatever has an office or a real asset, right, like equipment or whatever, they give something called depreciation. Okay, so what I'm going to explain to you. So if this property is generating a 6% 6% rate of return, right? So let's just do simple math here. This is what the big corporations, but big folks think, wealthy people. So this is 500,000, and this is generating an income of 6%. So that's $30,000 it's generating in income, okay? So this is how it works, okay? So what they do, and I'm going to simplify this for you. I know for those who are very good with finance, I mean, just notice I'm simplifying this so that makes it easy, because otherwise it's going to take me hours and hours teaching this. But basically what's going to happen is you have 30,000, right? So 6% this is making, it's making you every year 30,000, okay? 30,000 it's making every year. Now what happens is you got to pay 3% interest, right, on this from the bank, because you took the bank's money. So they have 3% interest. So then what happens is you're going to pay $15,000, okay, in this for this business, for this as interest, right? This is negative. And then you're left over with a profit of about 15,000. Now, this 15,000 is also sometimes majority of it will go into something called principal also. Okay, for those who want to be very specific, bank is going to say pay us interest plus principal, right? So this is principal. Okay, now what I want to show you is principal. Now, generally speaking, what happens in real life for this 100,000, if it was pre-tax, what would happen normally is this would have 21% tax. I'm just going to simplify and say this is after tax, but if it was 21% would be taxed, right? Correct? Now, in real life terms, this also should be taxed 21%, correct? Now, it doesn't happen like that for an asset, okay? This is why I want you to build assets, remember? So what you could do in an investment scenario is you could actually, this 21% here will have something called depreciation. Okay, an asset gets like real estate would get that, equipment would get that, even an office space, like you want an office space you buy, even that gets it. Anything that is related to business, right? Let's say you buy a car with the money, that also can have depreciation. So anyway, so the thing is that this depreciation expense effectively more or less erases this 15,000. Does that make sense? So meaning it's a accounting thing where they just subtract here. So if I put a different marker here in the middle here, it's just going to say something like depreciation expense. Okay, depreciation expense. So effectively, because of this depreciation that will be something around this 15,000, this also has no tax. Does that make sense? What's happening here? This is what the wealthy think. This is how they think. This is how they act. This is how they do. Because now what's happening is if you add up this 100,000 to the 15,000 that you just made, so 115,000, right, that you made for the year, if you think about it, because that's what this generated in a year's time, right? Even if you pay 21% taxes, your actual effective tax rate is more like, let's do like 21% minus this 15,000, which is 15%, let's say. So actually, because I'm just rounding out numbers, but this is how it's going to be. Your actual effective tax rate was 6%. Does this make sense? So this is what I'm trying to explain. There's this mentality where people say, oh, there's this offshore accounts that rich people have, wealthy people have. They don't need to have it if this is what they do keep doing, right? Again and again and again. This is why they say like, this guy paid less taxes than their secretary or whatever, because this is what I'm trying to say. The principal payment will get depreciation. And the beauty is this 500,000 asset, whether it is whatever it might be, even your business could have appreciation. Like if this 100,000 increased to 200,000 next year, your business's value also went up by double, right? So meaning you want to sell your business, you have double the amount of money you're going to get when you're selling it, right? So this is another benefit. So basically, I want you to think in this mentality. I don't want you to complain like these guys or gals out there. It's like 21% is too much or whatever. I mean, to think about it like this angle. 6% is actually what the wealthy are paying because of this depreciation and other benefits that they get. And this is something you can do too. It's not like it's not available to you. Like you buy a property worth $500,000, any accountant will be like, oh, you want to take depreciation expense this year? You're like, yeah, sure, why not? And then that's for about 15 to 20 years, depending on which asset class it is. You can go into specifics with an accountant, but I'm talking and telling you, hope this is making sense. Please type in the chat box if this is making sense, where you started off at 100, right? So let's do this simple math. Again, I don't want to confuse you folks too much. You started off at 100,000 for that business. That 100,000 allowed you to get 500,000 or 400,000. I'm going to say some people are going to say, no, 500 is too much. I've actually done that many times over, but okay, for your happiness, I'm going to say 400. It's not the case, but let's say it's 400,000, 4x the leverage, right? That 400,000, let's say, generates a net return of something like 15,000 or something, right? After you pay the interest, Chris, right? So 15,000 it makes. So now what happens is you got an asset worth 400,000 plus you got added here. I'm going to put it in green so you know it's profit or whatever. So you got added 15,000 for that year. So effectively now you've made more. And now if this asset appreciates, it becomes in 3 years time, which it's only going to do because I'm seeing this craziness here where people are buying up stuff they should not be buying and not messing up the market, like Blackstone buying 6 billion worth of homes. That is basically means that they're valuing assets to keep on increasing, right? That's what they're betting on. Now, even if it drops, and here's the thing, It could drop. I don't want to be like this bullish person, like, oh, keep doing this. I'm saying even if it drops, the beauty is if this keeps generating, this is why you got to buy safe assets. You got to think, right? That's what I'm saying. You just don't go buy anything, but see something that will have value long term. As long as it does something called debt service, right? Debt service, which is basically where you can pay back that interest and even in principal by that matter, you're good. As long as you can do that, you can keep doing that forever and ever and ever, you're good. So as long as you can do that, like meaning if the interest rate is 3%, 4%, you can pay that interest, you're good. And if an asset is doing that, it's fine. So now what happens is if that asset, which is worth 400,000, became worth 600,000 in say 3 years, 4 years, or whatever, now that appreciation, as I mentioned to you, that $200,000 is tax-free. And now you can do what you want with that appreciation. You want to take a loan against this as an interest-only loan, you can get that, where this is what Jeff Bezos does, right? What they'll do is they'll take this 200,000. I'm saying he'll do 2 billion, but he will say, give me a loan for this 200,000, right? This 200,000, they'll give you a loan, and there for him, it's going to be very low interest. For us, it might be 3%. So it'll have 3% interest, right? So if you do simple math, that's an interest-only loan. It's not going to have any principal payment, right? So let's just do some simple math. So what you do is 200,000 times 0.03, 6,000, right? So that's $6,000. Okay, hope that is making sense so far. That's $6,000 that Jeff Bezos pays to the bank. Okay, that means effectively, if he can just manage to pay $6,000 for taking $200,000, that's like $600, like $500 a month. If Jeff Bezos can pay $500 a month, he can take $200,000 from the bank. And then what they do is at the year end, they pay it back and they're good to go. So all that money that they took for the entire year, they paid back at the end of the year, they're good. So money now is always more powerful than money later, right? So meaning if we agree that money went up by 7.5, which is fake, but let's say 7.5 like they're saying, right? I'd rather end every day of the week take 3% from the bank and pay them back when anyway the money went valueless by 7.5, right? Because at the end of the day, if I could just wait on it, I can do whatever I want with this 200,000. I buy something, I use it for my own stuff. I just have to pay that $500 a month, right? So this is how they don't pay much taxes, because at the end of the day, if he can pay the 6,000 somehow, he's good to go. And you do that over 200, like hundreds of billions of dollars, like 50 billion, 60 billion, whatever they do, then they just have to pay the interest on that. Then they can easily handle it because they know that their stocks will keep going up, right? Then their appreciation of their existing assets will keep going up. So then they can use that appreciation to pay back this loan. So what they will do is like, see, this is one property of theirs, or they're one company of theirs. See, company 2 is an asset. That's the thing. If there's another one, which also is 600,000, which is easy for those guys, and you can too if you are patient enough, and it also had 200,000, what they will do is they'll take this loan at the end of the year for this, say 3%, and then they'll pay back this one with that because their actual asset is this $100,000, which in this case will be 100 billion or whatever their company shares are or whatever. Hope that's making sense. Is that clear? So my final point I'm going to do, because I want you to watch this replay again and again, is you got to look to build assets. That's what we'll do. It's not about making some money here and there. I'm going to dabble with Amazon. I'm going to dabble with selling on Etsy. It sounds so cute. I'm going to sell stuff on eBay. It's so cute. How do you build a business? Okay. And a consulting or an agency business is the best kind of a business if you want to get into that too, because it's long-term if you get a bunch of clients, right? And that could be one way. You want to build your own business doing other things, regardless. As long as it's something that can give you stable, consistent income, then you can do all these strategies that the wealthy do. And if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, you'll not get the access to all this stuff. I'm sorry, you cannot. This is why it's the best time in the planet, in history, to be an entrepreneur, regardless of who you are from, where you're from, who you are, doesn't matter. Whether you're male, female, whether you're Black, Latino, Asian American, or Asian, or you're from Asia, Africa, Australia, it doesn't matter. You can still do the same. And as money on its own keeps on getting created more and more and more, this right here, even though they might say it's not 7.5, it's 5% tomorrow, at the end of the day, it's in your best interest, because the more this inflation occurs, the more it helps people with assets. You want to be that person who owns assets. You want to be that wealthy person, right? Not that rich person, wealthy person. Because then what happens is you're always fighting inflation, and you're not relying on scraps that gets thrown at you by the government or by your job or whatever, because you're always going to feel left behind. It's like you're running a Ferris wheel and you're unable to catch up. It'll always feel that way. If you do it this way, where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to build assets, that's my business, then that business will buy more assets. That could be by other businesses, that could be real estate, that could be other stuff like stocks or whatever it might be. And those assets will appreciate over time, and that appreciation has no tax unless you decide to sell. Another important thing, you can refinance it. That's what it's called, where you can leverage the existing asset to buy something else. And you can keep doing this again and again. And over a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year period, you keep doing that in this kind of environment, which the Federal Reserve has done, which the fractional reserve banking system has done, and which the institutions have created. You'll always stay ahead. And that's my key component. Because as I said, if I go back here and we discuss like who owns what and what's happening, if you go back to this here, this drawing here, the final point I'm going to make, if you go back here, you see these 5 institutions. You got the Federal Reserve, the central bank, that is the banking system, right? Your JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, whoever. And you got the institutions, and then you got the big businesses, and then the government. All these are interlinked. Nobody will do anything to hurt the other. Okay, let me be clear. Nobody will do anything to hurt the other. So it's in your best interest then to follow the money and do what these folks are doing. Do what these folks are doing, right? Instead of complaining. We see this a lot, right? People are always complaining, but not doing what's being done. And it's like this. If you want to play the game, understand the rules of the game, and then beat the game, right? If you don't understand the rules of the game and then you complain saying the game is unfair to beat, then you're always going to feel like it's not fair, right? So hope that is clear. Okay, so that said, if you enjoyed this training, like, share this, and also watch this later. I appreciate that. If you want me to do more training like this, which is kind of different from what I normally do, which is how to generate revenue on the internet, or how to build an agency, how do you sell your videos for top dollar, how to be an affiliate marketer, all that stuff. I love doing that too, but I also want to do this because it'll give you a bigger picture of how to basically think like the wealthy, how to behave, and how to basically play the game, right? Because when I understood this, I changed my friend circle. I changed how I think, how I react to things. And I also changed how I complain about things, because always used to be like, oh, everybody's out to get me. Nobody cares about me. I'm like this little guy or gal, right? Nobody cares about me. And I used to always feel helpless, right? But when I understood this game, I know exactly what the play is. It's like, how, you play, you watch baseball or you watch football or you play soccer or whatever. If you can understand the play beforehand, like, oh, the pass will be to that person, and you intercept that pass ahead of time, you'll always be ready, right? That's what brilliant players, the best players do. Same thing I'm telling you. I'm telling you, this is how these folks will play the game, not just now, hundreds of years from now. And if you understand the game and play the rules and you use it for your benefit, it will be a game changer for you. Okay. If you like more of this training, please let me know, share, like this stuff. I love to do more of this stuff for you if you like it. I don't know if people enjoy this kind of stuff. Sometimes it's kind of, if you will, a little bit dry information. I try to make it as entertaining as possible by drawing things over visually so you can understand. But hope you liked it. Do let me know in the chat box, in the comment section or whatever, if you enjoy this. I would love to keep doing more of this stuff for you. This is completely value. I don't have anything to sell. Again, as I said, I don't have any incentive from this. I'm just doing what I'm learning. And I learned this information, just for your information, from speaking to these folks, banks, institutions, people who manage money, right? Big businesses, people who actually employ people and stuff. I even study these folks here, right? What are they doing every single day? Like, what is in their mindset, right? Because these folks, these arrows that I just put, they don't get reelected every 5 years like here. They are there for like JP Morgan has been there for 100+ years. Institutions like BlackRock has been there. I think BlackRock was a little bit actually, if you will, a newer firm, but Vanguard has been there for like decades, right? Same people owning it, basically, same board of directors and all that stuff, more or less. Federal Reserve has been there for 100 years. So they will not change their way of thinking and stuff like that. But government keeps changing. So this is why I don't try to pit each other against each other, right? It doesn't help you. I mean, it's beneficial. I know not everybody has the best interest at heart, politicians and stuff, but I'm just saying they don't make the real decisions. It's these other folks, because they control how the economy behaves. And with the stroke of a pen, they can actually make a bigger impact to the entire world than government can, right? Although, there are some areas like military and other stuff, maybe government has control over, but I'm saying economically, like as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, you should be following these other folks, not just the government. Okay. So hope that helps. Thank you so much for all the comments and stuff. I really do appreciate it. And do more of this stuff as I get the chance for you folks. Have fun. Have a great day everywhere around the world. I wish you all the best. I'll talk to you very, very soon.